It was once the grandest mansion in Tooele, the pride of the town, a place of elegance and light. But when its gilded halls became a hospital, hope turned to horror. More souls left in coffins than walked out healed. And today, those restless spirits are said to roam its corridors still, waiting for anyone brave enough to step inside the Old Tooele Hospital. And never leave the same. Stay with us, because what you're about to hear may forever change the way you look at life and death. Long before it became a place of whispers and shadows, the Old Tooele Hospital was known by another name, the Lee Mansion. Rising proudly against the Utah horizon, it was the kind of home people envied, a palace built in the desert. Its tall windows glimmered like jewels in the sunlight, and within, polished oak floors reflected the soft glow of chandeliers imported from afar. Guests who entered its doors found themselves immersed in warmth and refinement, velvet curtains, gilded mirrors, and a grand piano whose melodies often floated out into the quiet streets. For the townspeople, the mansion symbolized success and prosperity. Families strolling past would pause just to marvel at its elegance, whispering dreams of fortune and a life within its walls. Children pressed their faces against the gates, hoping to catch a glimpse of the lavish gatherings hosted inside. To all appearances, the Lee Mansion was a home, blessed with joy and light. Yet even in those early days, not everything was as it seemed. Servants spoke in hushed voices of unsettling drafts that swept through sealed rooms, and footsteps that echoed down hallways when no one was there. Doors would creak open on their own, chandeliers swayed without a hint of breeze, and more than one maid swore she felt cold fingers brush her skin in the dark. Though the family dismissed these claims as nonsense, unease crept steadily through the staff. One winter evening, during a grand party filled with laughter and music, the pianist suddenly faltered. She claimed her hand had been seized by something icy and unseen. The incident was quickly smoothed over, laughter returning to the room, but whispers spread. Some said the mansion was too perfect, too polished, hiding secrets within its walls. Still, life went on. The mansion remained a jewel of Tooele, admired from afar, envied by many. But beneath the beauty, something restless stirred, waiting for its chance. That chance would come years later, when the mansion's glittering facade would be stripped away, and its halls filled not with music, but with the cries of the suffering. Time has a way of stripping even the brightest jewels of their shine. The Lee Mansion, once a beacon of wealth and elegance, began to fade. The laughter of parties grew quiet, the music of the piano stilled, and the once proud family moved on. Dust gathered where chandeliers once sparkled, and silence filled the rooms that had once held voices of joy. But the house would not stay empty for long. In the early 20th century, Tooele faced a growing need, a hospital. The mansion, with its spacious rooms and commanding presence, seemed a natural choice. Locals were told it would become a sanctuary of healing, a place where the sick could find relief and the injured could recover. With hope in their hearts, townsfolk watched as velvet curtains were pulled down and replaced with stark white sheets. The parlor became a waiting room, the grand dining hall a ward filled with beds, and the music room an operating space. At first, there was optimism. Families brought their loved ones to the new hospital, believing its walls now held the power to save lives. But that optimism was short-lived. The building resisted its new purpose. Patients arrived hopeful, yet many never left alive. The halls that once rang with laughter now echoed with sobs, prayers, and the hollow rattle of deathbed breaths. Whispers began to circulate. Nurses spoke of figures gliding down corridors, pale and silent. Patients claimed to see shadowy shapes lingering at their bedsides, watching, waiting. Doctors dismissed these tales as hysteria, yet even they began to avoid certain wings after nightfall. The West Wing especially gained a reputation for icy drafts and unseen presences, as though something there hungered for the suffering around it. And there were the coffins. Too many coffins. Families who had carried their loved ones into the hospital with trembling hope too often carried them out again in silence. Grief etched into their faces. The mansion had been reborn, but not as a sanctuary. Instead, it had become a place where hope came to die, and where something unseen seemed to grow stronger with every departing soul. The transformation of the Lee Mansion into a hospital might have begun with hope, but soon it became infamous for despair. Its whitewashed walls turned grey with sickness, and its once polished floors grew stained with blood, sweat, and tears. Beds lined the halls, each filled with patients whose eyes reflected more fear than faith. The cries of the suffering echoed day and night, seeping into the very bones of the building. Electricity in the old mansion was fickle, flickering without reason. At times, the entire ward would be plunged into darkness, leaving only the faint glow of lanterns. In those moments, whispers could be heard, voices too soft to belong to the living, sighing and calling out names that no one recognized. Patients spoke of icy hands brushing their cheeks, or of shadows gathering at the foot of their beds. Some claimed to see the figure of a woman dressed in black, drifting silently through the halls, her face hidden beneath a veil. The staff worked tirelessly, but they too were not immune to the terror. A nurse, assigned to the West Wing, swore she heard footsteps pacing just beyond her lantern's light. When she finally turned, she saw a shadow standing at the end of the corridor. She blinked, and in the instant her eyes opened again, it was directly in front of her, faceless and looming. Her scream brought others running, but when they arrived, she was alone, pale, shaking, unable to speak for hours. Even the children who were brought to the hospital spoke of things no child should ever know. Some cried out about the dark man watching from the corners. Others pointed at empty spaces and whispered about figures their parents couldn't see. The grand piano, long untouched, became another source of dread. On countless nights, nurses swore they heard it playing faintly, but the music was warped, a slow, distorted echo of the cheerful songs once played there. Its notes twisted into something mournful, as though the house itself was crying. Tooele's hospital had been intended as a place of mercy. Instead, it had become a chamber of suffering, where both the living and the dead seemed trapped together in endless torment. By the time the last patients were discharged and the Tooele Hospital finally closed its doors, the building was already steeped in a reputation it could never shake. Locals spoke of it not as a place of healing, but as a place that swallowed hope and fed on grief. Its walls had absorbed too many cries, too many final breaths, and now, with the living gone, it belonged entirely to the dead. Paranormal investigators who dared to enter after its closure documented things that defied reason. Voices were captured on tape, faint, desperate whispers begging for help. One recording held a single word, repeated over and over, "Stay." Footsteps echoed in empty hallways, and doors slammed with enough force to rattle the floors. Though no one was near them, the West Wing became the epicenter of terror. Visitors reported sudden drops in temperature so sharp their breath crystallized in the air. Others felt their chests tighten, as though unseen hands were crushing the life from their lungs. Many spoke of being touched, scratched, even shoved by something they could not see. And then there were the shadows, grotesque forms stretching unnaturally across walls, bending and twisting in ways that did not belong to the light. The grand parlor, once a place of elegant gatherings, grew infamous for another reason: faces in the windows. People passing by at night claimed to see pale, expressionless visages staring out, vanishing the moment they were noticed. More chilling still, some claimed the faces weren't human at all, distorted, hollow-eyed, their mouths open in silent screams. The piano, untouched for decades, continued its mournful recital. Many swore they heard its faint, discordant notes bleeding into the night air. When investigators searched the room, the keys would be moving on their own, pressing down as if guided by invisible fingers. It was no longer a hospital, nor a home. It had become a prison, not for the living, but for the countless spirits tethered by pain and loss. Freed from the distraction of daily life, their presence was undeniable and their rage unmistakable. The Old Tooele Hospital was no longer just haunted. It was alive, Today, the Old Tooele Hospital still stands, its towering frame casting long shadows over the quiet town. Time has stripped its walls, paint peeling like rotting skin, yet the building endures, hollow but not empty. For though its patients and doctors are long gone, the mansion-turned-hospital has never truly been silent. Locals rarely speak of it aloud, but everyone in Tooele knows the stories. Passers-by swear they've seen faces in the upper windows, pale and watching. Others avoid the property altogether, crossing the street rather than walking past its rusting gates. Those who have entered describe a weight pressing down upon them the moment they step through the doors, as if hundreds of unseen eyes are fixed on their every move. Some visitors leave shaken but unharmed. Others walk away with deep scratches carved into their backs or bruises where unseen fingers gripped too tightly. A few emerge with a hollow look in their eyes, whispering about voices calling their names, voices that followed them home. And some, they say, never return the same at all. The stories are endless. A man touring the hospital claimed something whispered in his ear. "Don't leave." Paranormal investigators caught a door slamming so violently it cracked its frame. One woman swore she saw the veiled figure of the black-dressed woman glide past her in the West Wing, only to vanish when she gave chase. And then there is the piano, whose keys still strike out on their own, echoing through the dark like a siren call. The house was born of elegance, fell into despair, and now exists as something far worse, a cage of restless spirits, feeding on fear, growing stronger with every soul that dares trespass. It is no longer a mansion, no longer a hospital. It is a living shadow, a place that waits patiently for its next victim. The Old Tooele Hospital has been called many things, but to those who've heard its whispers, felt its touch, or seen its faces in the dark, it is known by only one name: the house that never sleeps. The Old Tooele Hospital, once a mansion of wealth, then a hospital of despair. Decades have passed, but the whispers remain. Locals still cross the street to avoid its shadow, and those who dare step inside leave marked, sometimes in body, always in soul. Some say the dead are still waiting, watching from the windows, bound to the halls where they suffered most. One question remains: would you dare enter, knowing the house never sleeps? Indeed, if this story sent chills down your spine, make sure to like, subscribe, and ring the bell, because darker stories await, and you don't want to face them alone.